everyone. I wanted to introduce myself. I am Dr. Regine Muradian. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I have a practice in Glendale. I specialize with children, with teens. I also run parenting classes, and I'm so glad to be here today to talk about anxiety and how it presents in children and teens and with parents, and what this pandemic has really brought to us in terms of a lot of the symptoms. I am also a children's author. I have authored 2 children's books, Frankie and the Worry Bees and Frankie and His Homeschool Adventures, and have a 3rd book in the works right now called Francine and Her Special Talents. You can find my books on Amazon.com. You can also find my books and learn more about me at www.reginemuradian.com and also on Instagram at Dr. Regine Muradian. So glad to start today on this topic of anxiety. It's been a really tough year for many of us, to say the least. And as parents, we've been working from home. We've been teaching our kids. Now our kids are slowly adjusting back to school. So I wanted to give some brief information and just some tips and tools on what it looks like. So we all know that biologically, anxiety is an important chemical. It's a fight or flight response to have in our body. We can all agree with that. Without anxiety, we would be numb as humans, and we would not be able to accomplish much in our lives. So let's call it a reasonable worry. So for example, a reasonable worry is when you know you have a test tomorrow and you need to study, or you have an important presentation that is due and you need to prepare a few days before. And an unhealthy worry is when you have a test tomorrow and you do not study because you tell yourself, well, what's the point? I'm going to fail anyway, so what's the point in studying? Or you put off a presentation and do not show up because you have a fear of failure. So in my practice, I really like to give these 2 different types of examples so people can understand when anxiety has become a concern or has taken over your life. And also as parents, it gives you a good sense and feeling of what signs to look out for. Now, in younger children, as early as the preschool years, anxiety can be present, and it may show itself as separation anxiety, aggressive behavior, and or physical symptoms. The most common physical symptoms that I see in children is when they have a difficulty separating from their parents. The child may cry for hours on end and cannot be soothed until the parent returns. Another type of physical symptom, especially as the kids become a little older in elementary school and also middle school and high school, is vomiting, extreme nausea, not wanting to go to school. So whether it's a 35-year-old describing that they're struggling on how their anxiety first appeared, or the child's parents, as a parent, when you're remembering what those experiences were, they're very, very similar in nature. So one thing in common is how anxiety takes over and control of the mind. And this is really important so you understand how it takes control and it kind of fuses in the brain. So I want to go over some common fears that kids and teens and us as adults, we tend to experience. So there's fear of separating from a parent. That could be one type of anxiety. Fear of enclosed spaces. A fear of vomiting. Fear of failing, so usually really high achievers. Fear of heights. Fear of speaking up, fear of taking tests, fear of performing, and the list goes on and on and on. So you can see that fear can present itself in different situations. So it's one thing I want parents to really understand, and whoever's watching today, is that as humans, we are the change, right? No matter how old we are. I get this question quite a bit. Well, my teen 16, can he change? And I said, yes, absolutely. And support is like walking on a bridge together, right? So whether they're seeking support from a therapist, one amazing resource is psychologytoday.com as well, where you can find numerous therapists as well. And we as parents are also the first bridge to that support. So you may feel like turning your back, but will you allow it? And I often say this to my kids and teens who are anxious is, are you going to allow it to take over you? So speaking to someone that you can trust is really the first step. And I always tell kids and teens and parents that you should feel so proud of yourself that you are willing to create a change in your life. You're willing to pick up the phone and make that change. So whether it is your child suffering with anxiety, with stress and or irritable behaviors, aggressive-like behaviors, you will also see yourself within your child's struggles because it is teamwork and it is working together. I always tell parents that when we create a change within ourselves, we do notice that our kids start changing because they really look up to us. We are their role models. And when they see change happening within us or they see a positive behavior emulated by us, they will change as well. We really need to also understand what anxiety has become somewhat of an epidemic. You know, I really believe that anxiety has always been there for centuries. The difference today is that as mental health awareness is increasing, social media has really given a platform for many to talk about it. So now we're hearing more about it. It's more common. So it seems like more and more people have anxiety when in reality, what we are really seeing is more conversation and awareness taking place. So this really reminds me of the COVID-19 cases that started increasing lately. Is it increasing because we are testing more than we did a month ago? Well, I can say that we are certainly talking more and more about anxiety in our families and environment. So it just appears that it's more on the rise. Now, the other piece to really keep in mind is there's going to be a lot of, I call them the post-COVID stressors that kids are experiencing. Kids have been for this past year socially isolated. They've been at home doing schoolwork. They're slowly transitioning back into the classroom. And so I'm really recommending that parents have conversation around what it looks like to go back. Having a conversation around is, how do you feel? Do you feel comfortable going back in the classroom? This is what it's going to look like, whether it's cohorts, whether it's going 2 days, 1/2 day, whatever it is, the hybrid situation. And really processing now more than ever, communication is key because they are going back into an environment that they've never been in before. Also, to keep in mind that they've been studying from home, they've been doing tests from home, everything has been from the comfort of their bed and their desk in their room, and all of a sudden going back into a full classroom with students around them, with teachers. It's a very different environment. Plus, with all the COVID stressors, such as social distancing, the mask, the shields, and etc. So we have to prepare them to understand what they're going to see and that they are going to feel a lot of these fears and emotions. And that as parents, we are there to listen to them, to support them, and talk out those emotions. This is really, really important. One last thing here is on the topic of anxiety is, as parents, please, we should not feel ashamed or fearful talking about our children struggling, as that's the only way that we can decrease together as a community the mental health stigma. Anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation is all around us, and the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it in terms of processing what feelings are and emotions, whether it's a teacher starting the day in the classroom with a mindfulness exercise, or the parent asking their child every day what their day was like and what did they like and what they did not like. That's a form of conversation, and slowly, even if they do reject you, that's okay. Keep on talking. We need to be able to raise our hand and share our story. It's not about having our children just survive their fears and anxieties, about them thriving in this world and communicating all these discomforts, especially now coming out of a pandemic. We've never been through a pandemic before. It's the first time. And so we are going to be needing one another and to talk about all these concerns and fears that are going to definitely pop up. And finally, it's about finding that inner strength within ourselves as parents to help them. This is not about a weakness on your part as a parent. You have done your job, you've done your best, but parenting is a learning lesson. We're constantly learning and falling and making mistakes, and that's okay. And we are role modeling that as well and teaching our kids that, well, you may fail in that class, you may get a C, but how are you going to get yourself back up? It's all about building resilience and getting back up. So I want to go through some common questions that I tend to get, which are, what are some signs that I should look out for in my child or my teen who has anxiety? So first of all, you want to build communication. We were talking about this earlier, by using something we call active listening. And what this means is you are present and you tell them that you are there to listen. You're asking them if they want your advice or suggestions, and this is a way to give them control. Because remember that anxiety is all about control. So if they feel that they have an ear or a support or someone as an adult that will listen to them and not just give them advice, and you as a parent saying, well, are you ready to hear what I have to say, or may I share my advice with you? Then you're giving them that platform of respect and also having and engaging them in that conversation. So signs to look out for are academic performance is declining. I'm pretty sure we're going to see that because, remember that they've been during a pandemic studying from home. So that muscle memory that they used to be on the go before pandemic and studying and athletics, and they were constantly busy, that muscle now has declined. It hasn't been in motion. You've heard the term, use it or lose it. And now we have to help them build that resilience back into their academics and studying and routine. Another sign is nausea, sweating, dry mouth, chest pain, stomach aches, dizziness, numbness or tingling in the body and the throat, and some throat tightness. A lot of times I'll hear throat tightness, right? So that's really important signs to look out for, or they may feel withdrawn or socially isolated. So you may see that too. Another question I often get is, how can a child share or a parent help to share emotions more openly, right? Maybe my child is withdrawn, they're not talking to me much, they're in their room, they're isolated, I can't really get through. So I want to help parents more understand what the child is going through, the teenager is going through, or the young adult, or even us as parents, we may have trouble sharing our emotions. So first of all, keep in mind that when you internalize your emotions, they have nowhere to go, right? And this is called emotional detachment. So it kind of feels like a pileup, and then you feel that it's like a bodily physical response, which affects people in different ways. And most of the time this occurs as one has, you may have a fear of being vulnerable, or the person may feel that they're going to be judged by others, so they feel like they're not going to share their emotions, and so they stay silent, right? So one piece of recommendation I have that works really well is journaling, right? Journaling is such a powerful tool because writing is a form of release, right? It's not about writing something, we're not writing a poem or a novel. We're just writing down our feelings. It's just jotting down everything that we are feeling in that moment. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling, I'm stretched too thin. I have so much on my plate. So writing it down is a form of release. Then you can slowly practice sharing things that you love or sharing your emotions with others, and even sharing one thing maybe you weren't happy about that day and how you would like to change that. And I would really start small and eventually kind of building up that trust. And as kids and teens, and even as an adult, when you notice and you start seeing that, wow, that person's listening to me or hearing me out, it kind of builds that confidence in that relationship. Another common question I get is, what is the youngest possible age that a child can be diagnosed with anxiety and depression? The youngest age for anxiety can be seen around age 18 months old, right? There's different forms of anxiety. We talked about this a little bit earlier about the fears, and more detail is there's separation anxiety, there's generalized anxiety about 5 years old, where kids worry excessively about friends, they worry about family, they worry about grades, they worry about activities they're involved in. And there's also social anxiety, right? Is connecting with other people. We're definitely seeing a rise of that coming out of this pandemic and reintegrating into society. I mean, we've been told we have to stay 3 feet apart, 6 feet apart. I'm sure you've noticed as you're walking down the street, people kind of having this jump reaction when you get too close to them. That is a form of social anxiety due to a fear of getting sick or getting COVID, or just, so we've been kind of primed this past year in staying away from each other. Whereas before, pre-pandemic, social anxiety was really a thing where kids would feel socially anxious around others. So we may see a rise in that as well.